we have learned about that IO stream classes and java.io package. Now, let us see how the different classes in these packages can be utilized to process the input output mechanism in Java program. So, basically this module includes the concept of the application of IO stream classes into the program. Now, let us first start with a very simple one which we have already familiar to. So, suppose the calculator program to calculate something which will read some value from the input, say maybe standard input. So, the program we have already familiar to this kind of program, it is there. As we see, we have given the name of the class as input interest calculator. As we see here, this is the name of the class and this is the method, and in this method actually purpose of this program is to read something from a keyboard. Now, keyboard it is identified by system.in. So, here is basically you see system.in. So, it is a system.in. Now, first you see how we can connect a link from your program to this standard input, namely the keyboard in this case. Now, to do these things we have to create an object of the class data input stream. So, we create the object and let in be the name of the object, and this is the syntax for creating an object of the class data input stream. As you see, data input stream in equals to new data input stream system.in. So, this basically create a connection from your program to the keyboard here being the input stream source. Now, once you create these objects, then we can read the data from this. Now, to read it, here we see I use in.readLine. So, in.readLine, the readLine is a method which is defined there in java.io package for the data input stream classes. This basically read whatever the number of entity. For example, if we type say 245, so readLine is basically read 245 as a whole together. If I write say 245.67, so it will read as a whole thing. If we enter some string, it will read whole the string as a whole together. So, that is the idea about the readLine. Now, for the object in, we call the method readLine, which basically read the entire thing that is presently available in the buffer and read it. And then, so here basically we see we can read here, for example, this one basically reading the principal amount in order to calculate the interest here, for which we need the input from the keyboard, and this will be stored in a principal amount, rate of interest, number of years. So, 3 readings are here involved, and in the first reading as we see, we can read for the principal amount, and then in the second reading we can read for the rate of interest, and we can read here for the number of years. Now, after reading we can see we read all these things in the form of a byte. So, this byte is stored here in the form of this buffer temp string, and it is basically this byte is stored as a considered as a string actually. And then this method, you see, this is important to note that this method basically convert the string, because you read as a string and this string needs to be converted into the desired number. So, it is basically float. So, this method is basically read a string from the data input stream and convert into a float value. So, this is the value of method which is defined in java.lang package for the class float, will convert the stream into the double or float value. Likewise, this is also, as we see, it changed from the stream and reading and change into the float value. Similarly, here this basically reading the number of years as an integer, and we call this method which is defined in java.lang package to convert into the integer. So, integer dot parseInt temp string like we are already familiar to in several our discussed program we have used this kind of concept here. Anyway, so this basically shows an idea about how the data input stream class is basically used, particularly here in this particular example, to read something from the keyboard. Now, so this is just an example, and one more important example, that is dealing with files. So, how we can read some data from the file, how we can write into file, what are the different way the file can be read, for example, using byte stream classes, or how a file can be handled using character stream classes, etc. So, our next few slides include this kind of definition and mechanism rather discussion. So, this is file handling right. So, as I already mentioned that Java provides the package called the java.io package, which includes number of class declaration and the methods in each class. And one important class out of the so many classes is called the file class. So, it is basically called file IO stream more precisely. So, there are 4 major in fact classes belongs to file IO stream is are there. For example, the class file. So, it is a general file, and then class file input stream, this is regarding how we can read from a file, and then file output stream, how we can write something into a file, and then another is that random access file. So, all the file input stream, file output, they are sequential, that means reading one by one, whereas random access file allows one to read and from any random position. So, there are the 4 different classes, rather we can say 4 different mechanisms to deal with the input output stream related to the file. Now, let us see what we can do. Now, so far the file is concerned, first task is that how we can open a file object. That means, file is basically in an object oriented concept, everything is an object. So, file is an object, how we can create a file object. Now, this is basically, as I told you, there is a class called file. So, this basically this declaration, if we declare, then my file is an object of the file, and then it so my file can be opened using this statement new file name. Here basically every file that is there in your memory or in your system, they are basically have a unique name. So, you have to pass the file name. So, if you this is basically a constructor. So, if we passed a file name, and then we can create a file object. So, creating this file object means that from your program you connect one connection to that file name file. So, this is the one way, and this is the first constructor that you can use it. There is another constructor file, that also you can mention the path name and then file name. Now, the difference between this constructor and this constructor is that it assumes that your file is belongs to the same directory from where you are working, that is from your working directory, and the file is stored in the same working directory. Whereas, if you want to access a file which is not currently in your working directory, that you can specify path name and file name. So, this is the second constructor, and this is also similar, the third way very similar to this one. Here basically in the same working directory, but in the different directory. So, you can specify which is the directory under your working directory and what is the file name. So, these are the 3 constructor by which we can create a file object. In any way, there are actually the one main thing, that is their file name should be mentioned uniquely. If you do not mention the right file name, but you try to open it, then it will return an error. So, error is basically handled that way. So, this is the try catch block can be there. So, it can to check the exception if it is occur, and then it is. So, sometimes that file is existing, but the file is damaged, or that file is existing, but you do not have any permission to read or write. So, in that case also it will throw an exception, and then exception can be handled accordingly to make the program robust. So, this is a different way the file objects can be created, and once the file object is created, then we will be able to have the different information through this file object. For example, there are many methods which are related to this file class, say get name, it basically return the full name of the file that you have currently connected to. The get path, it will say the what is the path. Get absolute path, it is basically from any directory it will find and then path will be there. Get parent, what is the directory above this the file where it is present, and then whether rename to, if you want to rewrite the file into some other name, also it is possible using this file object. So, these are the those are the many utility methods we can say available related to the file. And there are many other things also. You can test a file, that okay, there are some methods like whether file exists or not, you can just do this using the exist method. Can write, that means whether the file is writable. Can read, whether read permission is there, whether it is a file or it is something then say other form, is a directory or is a absolute, that means it is a standard file or not. So, those are the things that you can do using this file object. Now, so regarding this file information, few more things also we can have, just last modified, that means it will tell you the date and time when the file has been used last time, and it also has the method length, so that it will return the length of the file. If you want to delete a file, that also you can do using delete method, and there are some directory utilities, that means using a file we can create a directory and then in that directory the file can be placed there, and make directories, more than one directory also can be created, and list of files that is stored in a particular directory also can be accessed using method list method, it is there. So, there are many utilities methods related to file which basically helps the programmer to handle the files in their own ways, in the different ways that they want. Now, let us have a simple example about, we have learned about the different methods, those are there in file, and some methods related to the checking status of a file, whether file exists, file available, what is the name of the file, what is the path and everything like. So, this example will help you to understand the idea about status of the file. Now, let us have a quick look about this program. As you see, this is the class that we have given and we import, this is the java.io.file, because we want to have the methods, those are there in this class. Now, as you see here, so this is the main method, and obviously throw and try catch block should be included here in order to make the program exception, handle the exception more reliable rather. So, here we see first what we do, we create an object called file to check, this is the name of the object of type of class file. So, this is the object that we want to do. Now, in this program we assume that user will send the name of 0 or more files for which he wants to have the information about those files. Now, here if user does not give any file name whenever he runs program, then it basically args length equals to 0. In that case, it will say that Java file test, this is the name of the program, and file name. You should give at least one or more file names there. Now, suppose if user gives at least one or more file name, then it will basically enter into this loop. Then for each file each input into the command line I equals to 0 to I less than args length, it basically create the method. So, the file to check new file argsem, that means it create an connection from the program to the file which is basically in the input. Now, so for this file we will just find this method get paths and get info. These are the two methods which is basically under this method. We define these two methods here. Now, so let us see what is the get path method and get info. This is user defined method. Now, here is the idea about here is the get path method as you see. So, get path method which is defined under this class, this is the file test class we can say. Under this method, this is the get path. Now, if you see get path method f dot get name. So, this is basically we pass this function here basically file to check like, and then f dot get name. Get name is a built in method which is defined in the class file. Similarly, get path, the method will return about the file object the path, and get parent return the parent of the file directories of this one, and then it will return it. So, it will print after getting about the file object path, name and everything, it will return, it will display on the input screen. And similarly, the get info is also a user defined one method, and it basically has that f dot can read, that means readable or writable, read write permission it is there, or what are the date or time, that is it has been modified, what is the length of the file, like this one. So, these are the different way the status of a file can be learned using the file object, and the different methods belongs to this class file. Now, so we learned about how to open a file object. Now, let us have an idea about how some contents which is already there in a file can be read from this file to the program. So, it is basically reading a file. Now, we have a small program to illustrate these concepts. Now, let us check this program here. We define one class which basically to check that how you can read a file. The name of the program here is file input stream test. Now, in this program as you see that this is the declaration of main method, and here again you see we create file input stream. So, file input stream FIN, as you know this file input stream is basically belong to the byte stream classes. So, it will read as a byte form like. Now, here the method that is already defined in the files input stream classes called the available. So, it basically if we call this method available for this object file input stream object, then it will return what is the total bytes that is there in the file. So, it basically return the number of bytes and it will print the total bytes is this one. Now, here is the suppose how we can read first 1/4 portion of the file. So, it is basically using this for loop for I equals to 0, I less than size divided by 4, it will read fin read basically the read method that is there in the file input stream class, and then it read the byte and then it basically convert this byte into character. So, it basically read the byte maybe that ASCII value and then convert in the character, that character will be displayed on the screen. So, whatever the content of the file it will be there, and then first 1/4 position of the byte will read and it will display on the screen. The same program can be extended to read part by part reading. Here is the next part of the program which basically tell you how the other portion of the file can be read. Now, okay, continuing this discussion, you see this basically remaining bytes, that means it basically, so after reading 1/4 byte it will tell that how many bytes yet to read it. So, it basically give the print statement that this is the file that is still remaining, and then for the remaining byte again we can write here the different way. I am just explaining that new byte size 4. So, this basically my plan is to read the next 1/4 part of the byte from the current location, and those byte will be stored into this array, a temporary buffer we can say. So, we declare a byte array namely the B here of size by 4. So, we declare so that we can store it. Now, here read B, the another way the method can be called, it basically read the buffer, I mean byte input stream file here and store the result into the B array, and if B in read not equals to bit length, that means it is not the coefficient, then definitely it is it is a file error, and if it is not there. So, if the total number of bytes is successfully read actually, then it will basically call this part. Here So, we just string b0 dot b length is basically converting the string and then we store into the byte that we have written and store into the temp as a string. So, it is basically idea about how we can convert a bytes into a string, that is basically more convenient. So, that if the byte stream is converted to string and then we can process the string. Now, here we can see once the whole byte array is converted the string. In the last example we are storing that one particular byte can be converted to character, but here the entire byte stream can be converted in the string and then this string can be printed on the screen. So, this is the statement, and likewise we can again still available this one is basically after reading first 1/4 part of the file, then next 1/4 of the part of the file, then the remaining file. Now, it basically says that this file is available, and here you can see there is again the method skip is basically skip the byte number of bytes that is there. So, it is basically skip size by 4. So, this way up to this we can cover the 3/4 part of the file into the input stream, and then file remaining for read is basically fn available. So, it is this one. So, this basically shows that how sequentially we can process, we can cover, we can traverse an input file. Now, so this is about how we can read. Here we have used the byte input stream classes one mechanism, reading in the form of a byte. Now, we will discuss about the just opposite one process called writing into a file, how a byte can be write into a file or a character or a stream can be write into a file. Now, here is a small program again to illustrate the concept of writing bytes into file. Now, here is a method class that we have discussed here, named the write bytes, basically writing bytes into file, and this program you see, this is basically the character stream, which basically shows that this is ASCII values of D, ASCII values of E is basically bytes. So, it is basically stream of bytes we first store into an array called the cities. So, it basically store all the information in the form of a byte, it is there, and then we want to write it into a file. For these things, here we see we create an object called out file of type file output stream. So, if you want to read some file, then we use file input stream. On the other hand, if we want to write something into a file, we should create an object of class file output stream, and this out file is basically the object that will connect your program to a file where you want to write something. Now, so it is basically we put this code under try catch block to make the program robust if there any exception occurs, so that it can be caught here. And here you see we first created, we just declare an object outfill of type file output stream. Now, create an object. In order to do these things, we first pass a file name where we want to store it. So, ct.text. If it is already exist, then okay, fine, I will come to this discussion later on. So, if the ct.text is the file name by where the it will make an, it will establish a connection from your program to that file, and this is the connection basically objects is basically established here. Now, here out file write is the method. If we pass this array, so this is the array of bytes actually, if pass, then the entire array of bytes will write into this file ct.text. Now, here again one important thing is that if already there exists a file named ct.text and if we write it, then the previous content will be overwritten, that means it will erased, only the new content that you want to write it will be stored there. Now, so this example explain you how a large chunk of data can be stored into a file, and then finally the out file dot close, that means you have to close the file. It is always customary that once you open a file you should close a file. So, here is the basically opening a file and here is the closing file after your operation is there. So, these programs explain nicely that how we can write something into a file. Now, so we have learned about reading from a file and writing into a file using the different method data input stream and data output stream classes. So, there are many other way also a file can be read. Now, I am to discuss the other mechanism how the file can be read. Now, so in the last example we have discussed about file input stream and file output stream, so that we can read from a file or you can write from a file here. So, here again another example which explain how the reading in the form of a bytes from a file is possible. So, again same thing, the file input stream, this is the class for which an object in file to be created, and then again we just make a connection, and then read method is basically read. Now, here this read method read 1 byte at a time. So, this is the read method, and here is basically this basically is end of file. That means, it will continue read until the end of file occurs. Now, you read 1 byte, store this in a temporary B here, and then this B can be converted into character, and then the same can be printed. That means, it will read a file and then content will be displayed on the standard input device. This is system.out.print, and finally, once the entire file is read 1 byte by one another, then it will be closed. So, this is a very simple way. It is most similar the file output stream classes that we have considered there or like. So, it is the idea actually that sequentially 1 byte at a time, and then the entire file can be traversed or can be read. Now, let us so we have discussed so far using the byte stream classes. Now, it is it is necessary to discuss about again doing the same thing, but using character stream class. So, here is the one simple program which includes how a file can be read and or it can be write in the form of a characters. It is very similar to previous one, only the matter that whether byte or character, that is all. Now, here you can see this is the method class we have declared, and in method here you can see what we have done. In file, new file, this is the name of the input file from where we want to read, and this is the name of the output file where you want to write into. So, these are the two objects, in file and out files, for the input file and for output file is created. And then here we use file reader is basically to create, to read a file, and file writer to write a file. So, the two other objects are created, those will be responsible for reading a file and output file, and this basically once the connection is established. Now, here this ins basically is now object is declared here, and now object is created. That means, ins is now connect to this using this file reader constructor giving the input file, that means these objects. So, the input data is input file objects, output data is output file objects, and for this using ins method and outs method we make a connection between the two objects, input data, output data from the program. And now, this is the integer character is a temporary variable, and here you can see ins read, that means from the input object the read method will read one character at a time, and it is basically read until the end of file. So, this basically end of file, and then it read a character from a file and outs write, that means we write the same character into the output file, namely here output dot. So, it is basically read one character from an input file called input det, and then write the same character into an output file called output dot det. Again and again, then once the entire file is read and then write is over, then it basically close the two objects here using the close method for the two objects. So, this way you can see how reading and writing is there, and here you can see all those exception handling mechanism is there in case suppose you are not able to open the file or not able to write the file, or file is corrupted, or whatever the file permission is not there, so many reasons. And then and then output dot file as it is there, as it is a override. So, always it is override. So, if the content is there, it is not an appending, that means whatever the contents are there, it will go on adding, it is not like that, but it can be done also in a different way. Now, here is basically we see that if the file already exists, then it will start writing from the very beginning. So, the previous content will be erased. So, this is the way that using character stream class, how the copying of a file is possible. Again using the same, but using byte stream classes also, how the copying can be possible. I will just tell you the mechanism for this. Here again, so we create two stream, file input stream and file output stream, the two objects in file and output file for the input streaming and for output streaming. And here as we want to use the byte stream classes, so instead of character we just declare a temporary variable called the byte b. So, where the byte read, that means where the byte will be temporarily read and stored there. Now, the next is that we have to connect the file. So, here for this connect we create an object in file new using this input file name and similarly output file name, in this case in data and then out date. Now, so this way we can connect then create an connection from the program to the input source and then output source, and then it will basically start reading until the in file is complete. So, is basically byte write bit, in file read, out file write, byte data. So, the same will read and write, and it is basically while the end of file is there. The concept more or less same in each cases, only the mode, the way we can read actually and then copy into there. Here in this example, as we see, in the form of a byte. And then finally, the method will be here. We have to have some closing mechanism, that this basically closing. Now, so we learn about reading, writing, copying and then storing data into a file. Now, here again see from the program how the data can be stored interactive manner, rather in one by one like. So, this example is basically explain you how the data can be pushed into some file. So, here basically read write primitive, that means it will read from file and write into another file, but storing some data from the program generated like example. So, first we create a file type object, that is the name of the file where you want to store it. This basically the name of the file, and then we create the file object primitive. So, this is the file object. Once the file object is created, then is basically file output stream is created, that means connection. So, file output stream class connection to this primitive means this file. So, FOS, and data output stream is basically another stream for the data outputting, and then this is the object is created. That means, here if you see, this is the file and FO is for file output stream and DO is for the data output stream. So, through the data output we have to connect to the file output, and then it basically connect to the file for storing some data into here. Now, here again you see for the data output stream write int, the method is there write int, that means it knows how to write an integer into this data output stream. Similarly, there is write double method there in the data output stream classes, which basically it helps how to write a floating point number into the object, and boolean also how, and then character. So, here you can see the 4 different type of data which can be stored into a data output stream, and then this basically store it. Once the data output stream is ready, then the same data can be pushed into this file output stream. Now, this is the method, this is the rest of the part here, as we see. So, we just we just write in all these things is basically create the these are the value to this file output stream, and finally, we have to close it. Now, again the object that you have created now, that can be read also just opposite mechanism here. Here we can see file input stream and data input stream, the same can be read from the other version also. So, here basically we write it here, and here we will read the same content using data input stream and file input stream mechanism. So, both way the things it is there. So, this example will tell you how we can store the data from program. These are the data from the program into some file object, and then same data which is there, how you can read it here. But while you are reading, you have to mention that which type of data you want to read it. If you know that this structure, if you read it, then it will work fine. If you do not read in that order, so first it is read double and this one, then some error you can encounter. So, you have to be careful about that, okay, in the way the data is stored, the same way it can be. So, this way any object having their values can be stored into the array. Now, so storing and reading into the same file, here we can see we have stored once and then read another, but at the same time both the things can be done. So, this is an example to explain it here, and here the read write integers, and here you can see this is the create objects of data input stream DIS, and this is also output stream object. So, two objects are created of type input stream and output stream. A file is declared here, this is the random data file here, and here you can see how we have developed the program. So, it basically generated random number and stored into the program here. Now, here is basically for I equals to 0, total 20 random number will be created, and then they will be generated using random function which is there in java.lang, and then write into that stream. So, this way it basically write into the file. Once the file writing is over, we can write into the same thing into into the file here, as here is a file input stream, the in file, again these are the values that is there, and read int, all the, that means whatever the file that you have written there, we can read, you can read in this form, and then finally it is closed. So, this basically the idea tell you how a random data which is generated in your program can be can be pushed to the file in a memory. Okay. Now, next is merging two files. It is basically the file buffer input stream mechanism, and this program is very simple. Here you can see we first create two file input stream, file 1 and file 2, and there is a sequence input stream file buffer. This basically take the two files and then convert into one file like. So, here is the idea about file 1 the first object, file 2 is the second object that we have created, these are the name of the file suppose, and then file 3 is basically the concatenation or merging of the two files. So, we can create an object sequence input stream file 1 file 2. So, this basically concatenate the two files text 1 data text 2 data into one file, and then the file that file can be stored there. Now, for storing, here is the idea about the buffer input stream in buffer, and this is the file 3, and then we can create it, and then the same thing can be stored, and then here is basically the content which is there can be read and then display it. So, this way this is the this is an example of sequence input stream class which basically concatenate two files into one, and then same file can be displayed or can be managed or can be processed. Okay. So, these are the different way the file can be handled as we have discussed here, and in our next module we will discuss about the random access mechanism to handle the file. So, thank you for your attention.